Hey you, how you doing? Doing good? Fantastic. I'm excited that you are here. And you should be excited too because it's October, it's Halloween month, it's the spooky month. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about some mythological monsters because it is Makeup Myth Monday. Woot! Who's excited? I'm excited. You should be excited as well. That's how it's going to work. If you guys could just take a second, click the like button. It only helps me, takes you a second, doesn't hurt anybody. So if you guys could just click that like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I am gonna make a pretty big announcement, sort of a big announcement, kind of an idea that I've had in my head on Thursday. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned for that. But let's get into this video and start talking about some monsters, shall we? Okay, so I brought you guys in close. So I am using a different eye primer this time around. I am using the Revolution, there we go, sorry, as my eye primer. So we are going to stick with basically one family. So there's tons of monsters, obviously, in Greek mythology, but we're gonna stick with basically one family because there's a lot of monsters in this one family. All right, so who are the mom and dad basically of this monster clan? We're gonna be talking about Typhon or Typhus, depending on which story that you go after, and Echidna, who I did talk about in my very first Makeup and Myth video. I'll go ahead and link that up here, and then I'll also link it down below so you guys can go ahead and watch that after if you haven't watched that one already. However, to give you some backstory, so Typhon, I'm going to continue to call him Typhon because that's what I called him in the original video that I did. He was basically created as revenge for the Olympians basically taking over. Gaia is his mother, and she created him as revenge, and he's like the only the only being who could really stand up to Zeus, and actually ended up taking down Zeus for a little while. And during that little while where Zeus wasn't in charge and Typhon was, that's where him and Echidna started having all these crazy monster kids. So there's that. So Typhon is basically this super scary dude, right? He's talked about that if he were to stand up upright, his head would scrape the stars, for lack of better terms. And he is basically human on the torso, and but then has 100 snake heads. There's debate about how many snake heads, but most places have him as 100. And then having his bottom half as 2 coiled snakes, but they actually have heads. So not really the bottom half of a snake. His bottom half is the top half of 2 snakes. So a scary dude. And then Echidna, now that I'm gonna actually start doing my makeup again. Good Lord. Echidna is kind of the counterpart to that, right? She also has a serpent torso, but then the top, they talk about her being very nymph-like, and what that means is that she's got this gaze that just entices anyone who comes around. So she is Typhon's baby mama, for lack of a better term. And if you remember in the very first episode that I did, that when Typhon basically stole Zeus's tendons, Echidna is the one who guarded them. Okay, so there's 3 children that are really, really well known and are not debated as much as anything else. And almost everything that I'm talking about is mostly laid out in Hesiod's theogony. Sure, that's the word, theogony. So the first child that these 2 monsters have together his name is Orthus, who is a 2-headed dog, sometimes just says multi-headed dog, that basically guarded the cattle of Geron. So these are these super awesome cattle. They're red. But that's really it. That's really it. So firstborn, not nearly as famous as their second-born. So their second-born son is everyone's favorite guardian of the underworld, Cerberus, right? Three-headed dog, basically fluffy, Hades' pet. Seriously. If you watch Laura or you read Lore Olympus, so adorable. So it's really strange to me that Cerberus kind of has a more prominent role in Greek mythology, being the second born. But I guess that makes sense. Sure. I mean, no middle child syndrome for Cerberus. It's cool for him. Now, one thing I do want to say about all of these characters is almost every single one of them is going to come up in a story, because these creatures give all sorts of hell to all sorts of people. Pun not intended, since we're talking about Cerberus, but it fits, so we're going to go with it. But just remember, these characters are all going to show up eventually in stories. I want to be able to do more research before I start telling the hero stories and things like that, because I want to do them credit so I can give you backstory, and it's good for my first couple. But once we get better at this, the heroes are coming. It was very intense. Now, their third, not disputed child is also related to one of my favorite Disney movies. Just like Cerberus is, seriously. And basically someone that Hercules has to handle as well, and that would be the Hydra. Now the Hydra is, if you don't know, is basically a dragon-like creature that every time her head, they say her a lot, so we're going to go with her head is chopped off, depending on whether you go with Hesiod or, Disney, 2 or 3 heads pop up. So every single time. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this and go, listen, Disney, you did not get this right. He didn't just have rocks fall on this creature. As soon as he kind of figured out that, enough with the head slicing thing, he actually basically cauterized through them, words. You'll correct me down below. It's fine. It's totally fine. I don't know words. The head so they couldn't grow more, because I'm a savage. And so, sorry Disney, you didn't quite get that right. All right, so let's take a minute before we go into the maybes of this union. So Cerberus, good Lord. So Typhon and Echidna are known as the mother and father of all monsters, and they're kind of attributed to most monsters, even if they're not necessarily in any mythology anywhere. And you have to remember that most of these stories were not actually written down until late in Greek history. Late being, late for the Greeks, not late necessarily for the US, because we're babies, right? Or they were written down by Roman poets, so not even Greek poets. So you have to remember that these stories are kind of told all over the place. But in general, if you don't know where a monster came from, you could probably bet that these two had something to do with it. Also the fact that they're both terrifying to look at, okay? They are, I'm sorry. And the fact that Typhon is basically Zeus's only adversary that could actually take him down. Sorry, Hades. Didn't really work out for you, did it? But Typhon, ruled long enough to have all these kids. So if you ever have a question on who is the mother, the father, and a lot of times when there's a talk about a monster and they say she, they usually say Echidna. They usually attribute that to Echidna. So, and then usually it's Echidna. If it's Echidna, it's Echidna and Typhon, right? So if you're ever reading it, mythology, and that's what I found a lot of people referencing, is if it's ever they came from she, or she birthed, or she gave life to, and it's a monster, it's usually echidna, which means usually typhon as well. Did I say that 20 times enough? Great, fantastic. So, totally having my once upon a time vibes with this next one. Another one of the children of echidna, which is why I did the she thing, is the chimera, because again, birthed by she. And so, I mean, that could be a whole bunch of different people, but I'm gonna go with the fact that A, it's a monster, and B, it says she, and every time that they basically say that, they're like, it's echidna's kid. Like, just roll with it. She's a badass. Can I say ass on YouTube? I just said it again! Ugh! I mean, yes, I set my under eye and did my brows off camera for 2 reasons. We don't have that many children left, and it's my channel, so I'm gonna do what I want. So there's that. And I'm not doing a wing liner because again, it's my flippin' channel, and I'll do as I please. So, okay, let's get back to some storytelling. So dramatic. Anyways, anyone who actually knows me is sitting there like, Sarah's lost her mind. And maybe I have. It's fine. It's fine. Anyways, okay, really, no, seriously, back to storytelling. Okay, so these next couple, actually, couple, you know, it's just how you phrase things, right? It depends on who you ask. Again, you know, a lot of these people are poets, or they're storytellers, or playwrights, or they were mythologists. It's not a word. It's not a word. Later. And so you have to think, just like, you know, fairy tales, these are told for generations upon generations. It's like the worst game of telephone ever. So whose parents to who did who didn't Zeus do? Nobody. Sorry, Zeus, my bad. Listen, I'll link that video up there too, and that's only some of them. Like, you got around. Okay, so these next ones, especially the next 2, are either said to be echidna's grandchildren or her children. It depends on who you ask. So if you ask Hesiod, these next 2 are her grandchildren. Ooh, the lighting are her grandchildren. If you ask, this is going to be a thing for me to say, the poet Lasus of Hermione. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's spelt like Hermione in Harry Potter, and that's how they said it in the movies, so that's what we're going with. Well, I think it's a he. I mean, it's Greek, so let's be honest, it's not really women poets. I didn't make it up. It's not my fault. It wasn't there. I'm just stating facts. According to him, they're echidna's kids. So the first one, lighting, hello. Good? Got it sorted? Perfect. No? Stop going orange. Knock it off. Need a better camera. Anyways, the first one that we're going to talk about is the Sphinx. And yes, I know that's also in Egyptian culture, but this is a little different. So still human top, lion bottom, flying thing. But this one is shows up with Hercules. He basically kills all the monsters, so it makes sense, right? So shows up in Hercules' story, and she's basically someone who kills anyone who cannot solve her riddle. No one can solve it except for Heracles. I keep saying Hercules. It's Heracles. This is Greek, not Roman. Heracles. The next one that is again debated, whose kid is it, is, don't you hate it? I was just looking. This palette does not have a mirror, but the last couple of palettes I have it, I'm like, oh, there's no mirror. If you do makeup, you know, is the Nemean lion. Did I say the Nemean lion already? It's the Nemean lion. So where do we know the Nemean lion from? We actually haven't told that story yet because, again, it's a hero story. So basically, gold fur, claws that can rip through armor. They're sharper than any sword. This golden fur is impenetrable. No one can kill it, except for a hero that I've already mentioned. We'll get there. Don't worry about it. But the Nemean lion. So basically anything that's a lion. Or a serpent, really. Like, let's be honest. That's kind of what we're looking at here. Okay, so the next two are like debated. They're kind of attributed to, but like no one's like, yep, that's them. They're definitely hers. The first one, if you saw my last video, I'll go ahead and link that there too. God, I'm linking a lot of videos. Who do you think you are, Sarah? Seriously. I'm a ridiculous human being. That's who I am. So shameless self-plug there. How do you like that? So if you watched my last week's video, it was about Prometheus. And there was this huge eagle that carried out his punishment of eating his liver every single day. It's a huge eagle. It's not a regular eagle. It's a giant eagle. Also, could be echidnas and in turn typhons. But I'm giving echidna all the credit because literally they show up in her, like, research that I've done. They showed up more on her side than on typhon's side, but like, I'm okay with giving her all the credit. It's fine. Totally okay with it. And last monster that we're going to talk about, certainly not least, because he definitely will come up in another story that I'm excited to tell because I saw the painting in Ringling Museum, because that's in Sarasota. But I saw an awesome painting there, and that is going to be of the dragon that guards the golden apples. Now, I don't know, you won't see a ton of him, but the golden apples, those are coming up because the goddesses are petty. But I think his name is Ladon. Most places just had him said the dragon that guards the golden apples. But I don't mind calling him Ladon. Ladon. But wait. For those of you who know Greek mythology, you're probably going, Sarah, you're forgetting like one of the most famous offspring, Scylla. Sort of. There's not a ton of people who think that Echidna is Scylla's mom. There's way more people who attribute Scylla to having different parentage. So sure, we can count Scylla in there, and Scylla is very much known from the story of the Odyssey, and of being one of two monsters through the strait that Odysseus has to go through. We're gonna go into that when we get to Odysseus, but I didn't include a huge amount about her because honestly, yeah, she is attributed in like one or two texts or one or two people, but most everyone else has her elsewhere. So yeah, Scylla, totally. She's scary too. Echidna could totally do it. But who knows? Again, so many different people told these stories, and you have the Romans fighting the Greeks on who's right. We all fruit. Anyways, so there's that. But here's the finished look. I was going to take my hair down, but I didn't like how it looked, so it didn't do it. Anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really love talking about kind of the creatures of mythology. They absolutely fascinate me. Not that I don't love the heroes. I love me the heroes, right? My team at work is Hercules, so I love heroes. But it's fun to kind of know the backstory, and I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks I'll do more monsters, or maybe maybe a ghost story or two, which we'll see. Not a big scary story person. Anyways, but hope you guys like this, so please hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already. Like I said, I want to try and do an announcement on Thursday, so stay tuned for that. YouTube should be suggesting a video to you right now, so go ahead and click that through if you have time. So there's that, guys. Drive safe and make good choices.